Let's go through an example of how to order fractions, decimals, and percents. What I like to do is separate the fractions, decimals, and percents into different piles. So we have our decimals, here's a fraction, decimal, fraction, and percent. And then what I like to do is look at the percent first. Percents are easy to look at because they're basically just numbers, right? We know that 44 is less than 89. We're going to go from least to greatest. Now look at your decimals. We know how to change a decimal to a percent. To change a decimal to a percent, remember, we're going to move this decimal place over to the right 2 places. So 0.121 is the same thing as 12.1%. 12.1% is less than 44%. Let's do our next one. We move this decimal over to the right 2 places. So 0.092 is the same thing as 9.2%. 9.2% is less than 12.1%. Our last decimal, 0.72. We move our decimal to the right 2 places. 0.72 is the same thing as 72%. 72% is going to go in between these 2 percents. It's greater than 44, but less than 89. Now we have our 3 fractions. To change a fraction to a decimal, we have to use some long division. Our first one is 2/3. Remember, when we're setting up long division, what's on the top is going to fall into the box. So 2 falls into the box here and 3 stays on the outside. I like to think if you just take your finger, you can knock over the 2, what's on the top, into the box. How many times can 3 go into 2? Well, 3 can go into 2. We only have 2 pieces. So we have to add a decimal place and a 0. How many times can 3 go into 20? 6 times. Now we multiply 6 times 3 is 18. We subtract. And we get 2 again. Now we're going to bring down a number. We don't have a number to bring down, so we're going to add a 0 and bring down a 0. How many times does 3 go into 20? 6 times again, right? So you notice that these are the exact same number. 6 times 3 is 18. When we subtract, we get 2. And we just kind of have this endless loop of 20. So we know it's 0.66 repeating. If we're looking at 0.66 repeating, we want to change this to a fraction. We move our decimal place over 2 places. So 2/3 as a fraction, 2/3 is 0.66 as a decimal and 66%. Okay, so let's figure out where to put 2/3. It's greater than 44% but less than 72. Let's look at our next one. 7/11. So we use our finger, we push down the 7 into the box, and 11 stays on the outside. How many times can 11 go into 7? It can't. So we add a decimal and a 0. How many times can 11 go into 70? 6 times. We multiply 6 times 11 is 66, and then we subtract and we get 4. We don't have a number to bring down, so we're going to add a 0 and bring this down to make 40. How many times does 11 go into 40? 3 times. 3 times 11 is 33. When we subtract, we get 6. Have nothing left to bring down, so we're going to add a 0, bring this down to make 60. How many times does 11 go into 60? 5 times. 5 times 11 is 55. We can subtract, and theoretically we can just keep going, but this is enough for now. 0.635. Okay, so 7/11 is the same thing as 0.635, right? We have a fraction to a decimal. We want to change this to percent. We move this decimal place over 2 places to the right. So 0.635 is the same thing as 63.5%. Now we can order this amongst the rest of our numbers, 63.5% is less than 66, which is what 2/3 was, but it's still more than 44%, so this goes right here. And then our last fraction, 4/5. We use our finger and we push this 4 over into the box. Can 5 go into 4? It cannot, so we're going to add a decimal place and a 0. How many times does 5 go into 40? 8 times. We multiply 8 times 5 is 40. We subtract and we get 0. We have nothing left over, no remainder, so we are done. 4/5 as a decimal is 0.8. And then as a percent, we move this decimal place over 2 places to the right. Just because we only have one number doesn't mean we only move our decimal place over one spot. We still need to move over 2 places, so we need to fill in this hole with a 0. So 0.8 as a percent is 80%. All right. 80% is more than 72%, but less than 89%. So here's our order.